Okay, if everybody can see my screen, these are our sponsors for Pro Organic Beliefs and our sponsors for our speakers meetings and other live options that we have, which someday that'll come back. The Bluff and the Belize Ag Report. So we definitely thank them for all their support. So our meeting today is with Mitylene Bailey, PhD, and her title of her presentation is Honey, I Bought a Farm, Now What? It's a concise guide to backyard garden and farmland analysis. How and what to plant, where and when. And Mitty is a native Belizean, so she kind of knows what we're up against here. So just to go over a couple of ground rules, since this is being recorded, and just some etiquette. We do ask that everybody please stay muted during the presentation, because anytime somebody unmutes, it tends to override whatever else is going on. And I apologize in advance if there's background things going on here, since I'm doing the screen share. I don't know if I can do that and mute it. And then this is a previously recorded presentation, which is our first time doing it this way. The reason that we're doing it this way is Mitty works for the government and she is in Taiwan, so the time difference was a challenge, but also she can't have Zoom on her computer. So we did it sort of a roundabout way, and her presentation is what our speaker's talk will be today. And then just sort of an introduction to Pro Organic. You can go to our Facebook page for Pro Organic details and information. And then we have a Facebook group that we use for discussion. So you can like both of those, join the group, and participate more with us. And then Pro Organic, the organization, you can go to our website, pro-organicbeliefs.org, for all kinds of information and how to become a member, see what's going on. Also on the website, there's a speakers section that has, for all of this year, 2021, all the speakers that we've had this year, we have the recordings on the website. So if you didn't get to attend one of the other sessions, or even if you did, you can go back and view those. Like last month, we had Umida Switlow from the Toledo district, Canada, both places she lives, talking about turmeric. We had Christopher Nesbitt the month before, also from Toledo. So at least via Zoom, we have an option for having more of a variety of people do our meetings, rather than just, people that it's easy for them to be here in Cayo to do them in person. But do go to the website and see about all the other meetings, the speaker meetings that we've had this year. And then you can also find out details on the website about our pesticide-free produce and how to get on the weekly list for ordering. There's an email that's sent out each week, and it has a list from our gardener, Renee, up in San Antonio, and it tells you how you can order, and there's pickup beside Hody's on Friday mornings, and in Belmont also later on Friday mornings. So you can go to our website and find details about that. Okay, so our meeting topic is learn how to plant and grow native plants in your yard or your land, and where to start with all that. Her presentation is about 35 minutes. And then, as we usually do, you can still submit questions via the chat session. And we may open this up just for, people talking during discussion after her presentation, as well as questions. We'll just go with the flow. But she does welcome any questions that somebody has. And this is her email address. And I'll also post it at some time in the chat session to everyone. But feel free to think of a question during her presentation, put it in this chat session, And what we'll do at the end of our meeting is I'll compile all the questions and email them to Mitty, and then she's really great about getting back to us. And she'll answer all the questions, and then we'll post those probably in a Word document beside the video on our website when we get the questions, the answers back. So Mary, why don't you unmute yourself and tell everybody a little bit more about Mitty?
Hi, everyone. First, I wanted to say thank you to everyone who's helped to make this presentation happen. It's not our usual presentation, like Jenny was saying, but it took quite a bit of work to get the Google and translate it to Zoom, but we're glad everyone got on board and we're here. I met Mitty through Beth, and Beth is here with me and just explaining to me her connection with Mitty goes back several years, because when Mitty was probably just out of high school, she went to Central Farm to the Taiwan Technical Mission due to her mother finding an article in the newspaper, and she volunteered to help out. And she's always loved plants and she's always loved growing things. So it just kind of made a natural progression for her to move ahead. And she was able to get scholarships through her bachelor's, master's, and her doctoral degree, which are all related to plants and farming. And now her doctoral degree was on a cellular level. It's really, really in depth that she's gotten to know plants that well. And she's always has a passion for growing things and teaching other people how to grow as well. So she has taught at Central Farm. She taught a fabulous course on post-harvest production. It's how farmers can save and market their produce so it gets to market safely and fresh, and finding avenues for farmers to what to grow and how to grow and when to grow it. So she's also taught a group of people in Belize City how to do backyard gardens, and whatever Mitty puts her hand to, she works very hard at it. And I know she's worked hard at this presentation, so I hope everyone is going to enjoy it, because Mitty is in Taiwan, but her heart is in Belize. So thank you for letting me introduce Mitty. She's a very good friend and a very fabulous farmer and gardener and researcher. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mary. All right, and that gave us a chance to have some more people on the call here. Welcome, everybody. And as I was explaining a couple of minutes ago, this presentation is a little different than the rest of them because it's pre-recorded, because Mitty is in Taiwan. So let's get started with her recording. And then I think it lasts right at 35 minutes. So we'll end that and then kind of see where we go from there. Some questions or just individual sharings. All right, thank you. Okay, and then Mary, go ahead and mute yourself again. Okay.
Hi everyone, welcome to my presentation for Pro-Organic Belize. I want to say first, thanks to the organizer of this presentation for inviting me. Thanks to the organizers for inviting me. And thanks to Mary for reaching out and Ginny for handling all the technical things. So I would like to introduce myself briefly. My name is Mitty. Hi, I'm an agronomist by trade, a plant biologist and a cytologist. I look at the cells of agricultural crops, specifically maize, immature pollen cells. And I grew up in Belize, in Hattieville, and I was a seasoned backyard gardener as well as a certified container gardener. And whenever I am home, I try to.
All right, I will start this over real quick and go back to, there we go. All right.
I want to say first, thanks to the organizer of this presentation for inviting me. Thanks to the organizers for inviting me. And thanks to Mary for reaching out and Ginny for handling all the technical things. So I would like to introduce myself briefly. My name is Mithy. Hi, I'm an agronomist by trade, a plant biologist, and a cytologist. I look at the cells of agricultural crops, specifically maize, immature pollen cells. And I grew up in Belize, in Hattieville, and I was a seasoned backyard gardener as well as a certified container gardener. And whenever I am home, I try to get involved in as many agricultural things as I could possibly get myself into, including urban gardening programs, teaching at the University of Belize Central Farm, and doing a few articles for the Belize Ag Report, and dabbling in a little bit of what Central Farm was doing there with the Talent Technical Mission before they left. So that is me in a nutshell, and thank you for your time, and thank you for listening to this presentation. So let's get started. So in this presentation, I'm going to talk about what do you do after you get that piece of land that you're intending to be a farm. And this is by no means a hard and fast rule of things that you should do, but it is just an outline of something that you can do, or like a checklist of sorts to keep in your mind. And it gives some direction, like where to start, what are the things that I need to do, and it makes it less overwhelming. So I will be talking about land topography, soil composition, and by that I will be talking about soil typing and water holding capacity. And then I will be talking about the crops to plant. So I will be separating my presentation with soils and then crops. So I will be repeating the soil topography and composition information. And finally, I will do a ideal farm layout. This is not how it's supposed to be, but this is a good idea of what it could be. And then I will give my final thoughts on, what I think about GMOs and that kind of thing. So here we go. So your land topography, what does this big word mean? It simply means how the land looks on the surface without considering the kind of soil that you have. So does it dip? Are there rocky beds? Are there inclines, steep or shallow? Or is it just a flat piece of land? So this is one of the first things that you will look at when you're considering buying some land, because the land topography will indicate accessibility, and if something big like a tall tree can stand there, Before I get into soil analysis, I want to clarify something about soil profile versus soil composition. So soil profile is the vertical layers of soil that you see when you dig down. I'm sure that you've seen, if you dig a hole, first layer is like grassy, then the other layer is dark. Past 6 inches to a foot, you will see that the colors start to change before you hit rock or a spring. These vertical separations is called soil profile. However, soil composition is a little different. It is what your topsoil is made of. And these are the first 6 to 12 inches of soil that is in your property. So what I like to do is understand my soil composition, and then I can know what to plant in that kind of soil. Something that we have to be acquainted with is not plant what you want to plant, because then you have a struggle, then you get frustrated, and then you go, oh, nothing can grow for me. But if you plant what your soil can grow, you will have plenty of that. And plenty of that means you can share and exchange with your neighbors, or you can turn it into a business. So this is one of the things to consider when you're doing your backyard farm or your backyard garden. What kinds of plants can my soil support? So we will look at the soil composition. What I like to do is get a jar and fill it about halfway and pour water in it and shake it until the soil is completely mixed in and there are no hard parts. And this analysis is based on the density. So the heavier pieces will sink at the bottom, and then as you raise up higher, the layers will be smaller and lighter. So what your bottle is going to look like is the sand or gravel at the bottom, and then you will have silt in the middle, and this is the clay mixed with organic matter, and then you'll have a final layer of clay by itself. And at the very top, you might see some organic matters and twigs floating. And so you can look at this jar and you will have an ideal idea of what your soil is made of. And when you are done doing that, you can go ahead and look at this chart. And this chart is called a soil composition chart. So for example, you have done your bottle test. And you notice that on the bottom middle, you have bottom middle just to the right. I think it's right. You have 40% sand. And then you have about 30% clay. And then you have about 30% silt. You fall with clay below, okay? So that is the kind of soil that you have. Now you have this piece of information. The other thing you want to know is, can this soil hold water? How does it hold up to water? There are some ways to get around soil that is dry. And one of the things that I have been seeing is the use of potassium acetate that is called solid rain. And at some point, maybe you don't have the means and ways to get to this kind of material. Or you just don't know what potassium acetate is and you don't want it in your soil. So my advice would be to understand your soil and grow what can grow in your soil. As you go through your gardening experience, you will find ways to add nutrients to your soil, and your soil profile will change over years. Does anybody else's glasses get foggy? So it's important to understand your soil water holding capacity. And this can give you an idea of the health of your soil, because the water holding capacity can support and nourish your crops, as well as the organic matter that lives inside your crop. And organic matter does not necessarily mean only dead leaves. It can mean like bacteria, protists, amoeba, and of course, earthworms and other little critters that burrow and make holes for air to go inside your soil. Because many people don't know, but your soil actually needs air, as well as water. You know, so if there's too much water in your soil, there's no opportunity for air. These organic matter cannot decay or exist. If there is no water holding capacity, there is no dilution of nutrients of the soil to go into the plants. And there is also no moisture for these organic matter to decay or live. So a simple experiment that I like to do for water holding capacity is I like to take a 1 liter bottle and cut it in half. And then I cover the mouth of the bottle with gauze or some cloth And then I invert the bottle into itself. Fill that up with sand and pack it down tight as you could. And then, well, not sand, but soil. Make sure you break up your soil in the smallest pieces that it can go. Pack it down tight, pour water in, and wait until the water passes through and empties into the bottom. Time it. Some soils, like sandy soil, will have a short time from the top to the bottom. This is called low water holding capacity. It lets the water right up. Soils like clay will keep the water in for a long time, more than an hour or even the next day. This is called a high water holding capacity. And the ideal soil, which is loam that we all like, will have middle ground. So somewhere between 1 hour, 10 to 15 minutes, 1 hour is great. And then you'll come back the next day and the soil will still be down. This is good water holding capacity. So now that you know your land topography, your soil composition, and water holding capacity, let's start planting. So the crops you can plant based on your topography. So for dips, for land that dips down, these tend to hold water in the rainy season. So you would want to plant water spinach, rice, taro. These things do really great in more wetter kind of soil. In the parts of your land that has rocky beds, you can do potatoes, cherry tomatoes, peppers, spinach, some chard, peas, zucchini, and rosemary, which is really, really good for rocky soil. Rosemary thrives in poor soil. You can also grow succulents in these types of rocky soil, and these do really well also. And these succulents include aloe vera, scadamile, and pitaya. So you could consider those. Another thing about the rocky bed is you have to notice what kind of rocky beds you have. If your rocky bed is mixed with sand and some kind of loam, it has some organic matter, then it's okay. You can go ahead and flatten your rocky bed. But if your rocky bed is completely, totally rock, just make a barbecue pit. Okay, so in inclines, you can do pumpkins, watermelons, passion fruit, and anything that runs, basically, as well as grasses, such as elephant grass or lemongrass. Sugarcane can also grow there. And you can do some bamboo shoots. Basically, if your incline is a rock, it's okay to do running vines because the vines will run over, and then you don't have to worry about about wasting that space. If your incline is a soil incline, then you want to consider things that could happen, such as erosion during heavy rainfall. So you would want to put plants there that can hold the soil together, and one of those are the grasses, which I call claw plants, because the roots are not very deep, but they hold the soil together very well. On flat plains, these are ideal kinds of things to grow. You can grow tall trees. Bananas are really good for flat plains because they're kind of top heavy. And this is whatever you grow on a flat plain should be compatible with your soil composition and the water holding capacity. So flat plain is just like the ideal type of soil. Topography. Okay, so now crops you can plant based on soil composition. So for the clay, you would want to grow things like lettuce, chard, snap peas. I really love snap peas and beans. Other crops that have shallow roots can grow in clay, and as well as broccoli and all the brassica species like bok choy, bai tai, jielan tai, and any of the Asian leafy greens can do really well in clay soil. And one common misconception about clay is that it's not nutrient rich, which it actually is. It is nutrient rich, but it doesn't release the nutrients as would other types of soil like silt or loam. So if you find that you have predominantly clay soil, you can work with it and it will eventually change over the years by introducing organic matter to the soil slowly, but it is not a lost cause. So silt, you can do onions, lettuce, broccoli, and as well as other related brassica species, as I mentioned before. And your herbs will do really well in these, especially like basil, which is a little kind of fussy, you know. And in your loam, well, this is called the ideal gardening soil. So you can do all your leafy greens, you can do your crops that don't need really good anchorage, like rice and corn. Those need anchoring because they're top heavy. So maybe you don't want to put them in the loam, but you can, but you have to know when to stop and give irrigation, you know. So when the rice starts getting top heavy, you can withhold water for a while to firm up the soil so the rice doesn't topple over. And the same thing with bananas. So in sandy soil, you can have tomatoes, green beans, cucumbers, onions, lettuce, corn, okra, radishes, eggplant, carrots, pole beans, greens, and spinach. And sandy soil is really great for other root vegetables like taro, potato, sweet potato, cassava, yuppie, carrots, anything that grows in the soil. So whenever it's harvest time, the soil can release your produce readily. So these are ideal for sandy soil. Now crops that you can plant based on your water holding capacity. And we really have to notice what kind of water holding capacity we have in Belize, because we have 6 months of wet and 6 months of dry, more or less. And so your land could be inundated with water for quite some time. You don't want to have your land sitting down and not working for you. So for high water holding capacity would be like bamboo, taro, and rice, because it would keep the water longer and you would not have to irrigate. It would also keep the weeds down, and you could benefit from not irrigating your soil and having it be irrigated by the rain, because that's free. So for plants that have low water holding capacity, similarly to what I mentioned before, these could be sandy soil. So you would have root crops like rice, carrots, you know, parsnips, anything that grows in, you know, the ground that is easily given up when it's time for harvest. Some vines can do well in low water holding capacity soil like zucchini and cucumber, and all these need is like a trellis or something to hold on to, or an incline to run up on. So now we have an idea of what we can plant based on our topography, soil composition, and water holding capacity. Now, what about temperature? And this brings us to what we can plant at what time of year. So in Belize, we have a wet-dry transition, and in the recent years, we've had some cooler temperatures towards the end of the year and the beginning of the first 2 months of the year. So in the wet months, we can start planting bamboo shoots, chaya, cowpea, cucumber, and eggplant. And I personally like to plant cilantro in the wet times, as well as the wet-dry transition, but I will get to that. In the drier times, you can do tomatoes, pumpkins, beans, sunflowers, and watermelons. And these do really well in the dry condition, especially tomatoes, because these are prone to some fungus if you don't have really good heirloom varieties. In the wet-dry transition, if you're not attending to your garden, like watering it by yourself, cilantro is a really good one because these need a lot of water to germinate. You can either soak them in water, give them a lot of water, I'm talking about the seeds, or crack them before you plant them. But these need a lot of water to get going. Corn is good for the wet-dry transition because as soon as the weather starts getting dry, it will be time to start harvesting. So during the wet-dry transition, you can have your corn being watered, and then once the weather changes to dry, and then it will be ready for harvest. And in the cooler temperatures is cabbages and lettuce, basil. If you're struggling with basil, this is the time to plant basil. It's quite fussy when it comes to temperature. And spinach. Why would we plant cabbage in this time of year? Because it tastes better. Cabbages grown in the summertime is a little bit bitter, and they tend to bolt. And by bolting, I mean the leaves start opening up and a shoot comes up because it's trying to flower. And I did an experiment some years ago with a cabbage variety, and I found that it tasted bitter because there was a high amount of metabolites, nitrates, and oxalates in the cabbage when it's hot and dry. So this is the reason for the bitter taste. Interestingly, though, there was a high concentration of antioxidants, higher than in the cooler months. But I don't know if the amount of antioxidants that it had in was worth the amount of nitrates and oxalates that it was producing. So just a side note. Now is my favorite part. Here is the ideal layout for your farm, your garden, your piece of land. And I'm not putting this to scale or drawing any specific size land, but this would be ideal for privacy, one, two, accessibility for yourself or somebody who's at home that needs to collect vegetables, and also for the animals that need to pass through your area. So in the middle here, we have the house, and the right and left of the house are border plants. And these could be aromatics like mint, rosemary, lemongrass, basil, marigolds, anything that is smelly that will repel flies, thyme, oregano, any mint family plants are very good here also. Or you can just put hedges if you like for flowers. In the back of the border plants to the left would be the vegetable garden, and that would be the closest to the house because these require a little more care and a little more attention. And you can quickly recognize if there's a problem, you have snails or you have caterpillars, and you can take care of that right away. You can also be on hand. They can also be in hand when you're cooking, just run outside, grab some cilantro and come back in. So this is a convenient place. Vegetable gardens usually require a little bit more hands-on work, and children love being involved in this, as well as, the older folks, to have something to do, water some plants, do some weeding. So vegetable garden right behind the house. Behind the vegetable garden would be a water source. And this would be perfect for the water source because This water can be used to irrigate the vegetables, as well as the groundwater that has soaked through from this water source can provide a continuous stream of groundwater on the drier days when you're not there to maybe fold over your vegetables for a day or two, at least a day, so that they don't wither and dry. Usually vegetables can recover after they have been suffered with no water, or they can recover after 5 days. But like I mentioned, there is a buildup of metabolites in the vegetables after they have been through a water holding experience. And so if your vegetable has, if you can't get to your vegetable the first or second day, then it's okay. But after the third day, there must be some kind of effort to water them to keep the nutrient, to keep it optimally nutritious. Okay, that's what I'm saying. So further behind the house would be the crops like the rice, beans, and corn. And I would say these require less attention than the vegetables once they take off. And so you don't really need to pay too much attention to the crops except for some weeding and monitoring in the vegetative state before they start reproducing. If you are growing a corn stem, you might want to pass through there when they're pollinating to help it to pollinate. And this would fill up your ears nicely rather than just let it pollinate by itself. So that would be the time that it would require some attention. So in the early stages and later on when you harvest or when you pollinate. And to the right of the house would be your orchard, behind some more border plants. And in the very back corner of the orchard, I encourage everyone to have a bee house. If you don't know how to keep bees, it would be a nice project. Or you can call a friend who keeps bees and they can have something to do. It's an opportunity to hang out, exchange ideas. Because the bees are responsible for pollinating 95% of the agricultural food that we eat. And without the bees, there would be no crops. And it sounds very simple, sounds cliche, and maybe even a little bit polemic, but we need the bees, and encourage the bees to come to your yard. Encourage the bees to pollinate your orchard. Encourage the bees to pollinate your crops, your vegetables, and your border plants. And that's it for my presentation. But before I go, I was asked a question recently, and matter of fact, every time I do one of these presentations or come in a group, I'm always asked, what do I think about GMO? And I think that's a fair question for somebody like me, who's a molecular biologist and an agronomist at the same time. And not only do I come across a lot of GMOs, we are trained to make GMOs. What do I think about GMOs? We have been participating in GMOs for quite some time. A classic example is the theosynthese that gave rise to the corn that we now know. But in that time, it was bred slowly to produce corn. So it was not specifically the transfer of a single gene, but more it was a transfer of several traits. And in molecular biology, we call that a quantitative or qualitative trait loci. So in GMO, you have a single gene being introduced into the plant, and it could be from another plant. In the lab, that's what happens in the lab. In agriculture, we also genetically modify plants and animals by selecting the better traits. But for an entire loci, means an entire group of genes. And it's better, I think, to transfer entire groups of genes than a single gene, because entire groups of genes work synergistically with each other to produce the best organism. However, single genes do not. Single genes do not. In my lab, for my experiment, we are not allowed to use GMOs because we use corn, and these pollen can spread far and wide. And I was lucky to have found mutations in my experiments that were spontaneous, 1, and 2, that were in the same gene. So I have a few different crops, a few different plants, families with the mutation in the same gene. And if this is not God smiling on me, then that's nothing. So anyway, my thought about GMO is that we must be considerate with this kind of ability that we have to change an organism, especially if it's an organism that we have to use for food, that we do not know the long-term effects of transferring single genes that are foreign into certain crops. And one of the emerging observations is that most people, or many people, are suffering from inflammation surrounding gluten and corn. And I believe in the respect of corn, because that is my model organism. It is because of the transfer of single genes. There is an unknown gene producing a protein that the plant does not recognize. And just like human beings, they produce plant antibodies to fight against this unknown gene, unknown protein. We consume these and it gives a reaction in our bodies, because our body also does not recognize this combination. We also have a reaction in the form of inflammation. So that is my thoughts on GMO. I don't think it's bad. I think that we should keep it in the lab. If we're looking at something, keep it in the lab. It should not be available for human consumption until extensive research has been done about the effects on human beings and animals. And I think that is the scientist's responsibility when it comes to GMO. Okay, so that's the end of my presentation, and I would like to encourage you to keep in touch with me. If you have a question or a comment, please send me an email, as I don't think I will be available in the Q&A after. And I really want to thank you all for listening to my presentation, and thanks again to Pro Organic Louise for inviting me. And I hope that I could be available for more of these soon. And thank you so much. Bye.
Okay. All right. Well, to me, that was very informative. Should have seen this 10 years ago when we bought our farm. Here's Mitty's email address again, in case anyone didn't get a chance to jot it down. Oops. Okay, I'm trying to. Oops. Okay, now I'm back to screen share again. All right, so here's her email address again, in case anybody didn't get it. And we have some comments in the chat. So if anybody has any questions, put them in the chat session, and this time go ahead and put it to everyone instead of the host. And what we'll do is, however many questions people want to ask, submit them there, and I'll compile them and send them in an email to Mitty. And then when we get the answers back from her, then we'll post them in a document on our website along with the presentation. So if anybody has any questions or comments, go ahead and unmute yourself, and we'll hear comments too. Yeah. Okay, I see a question from Karen about Hugelkultur, if I'm saying that right. I wonder if Mitty can give any insights, since she grew up in Hattieville and started gardening at a young age, it sounds like, from Patty, like how to encourage your neighbors to garden.
I wanted to respond to Karen's question about Google culture.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Oh, okay.
Yes.
I have a small lot in San Ignacio, right on Joseph Andrews Drive, which has been highly polluted soil for decades. And I trenched in my yard and buried banana trunks, everything off the coconut trees, every bit of hardwood that my yard produced. I trenched and buried it. And it really brought the soil to life. There's just a tremendous amount of, it goes from dead to alive because of burying decaying wood. It's unbelievable, the speed that it improves the soil. It's my personal experience.
I also think it's valuable in the dry season because that material beneath the mound is damp and wet and composting. But I hadn't thought about the fact that it's very nutritious as well. Well, it's compost basically, yeah. Yeah, but I haven't seen too much of it done here. I've experimented with myself a little bit, and I did see some beautiful growth around the mound, beautiful growth. So organic control of ants.
Yeah.
How about diatomaceous earth? I don't know if that works too much with ants. I've also experimented with mixing up ant hills, different ants. They'll have the wars with each other and then they'll disappear, supposedly. Anybody have any ideas on diatomaceous earth or other options for ants?
I have really mixed feelings about using diatomaceous earth because you're going to kill everything with, everything. except
Really?
except for long-legged things like spiders that don't drag their abdomens on the soil, but that'll
Uh-huh.
kill worms. You know, all your beneficials will be killed as well. And
So,
yeah,
so what would you use? What about cinnamon? Somebody mentioned cinnamon.
for me, this is my quick answer. The only thing that I would do is plant diversity and just try and make the environment really inhospitable for ants to colonize. With the shovel, with water, with, you know, just physically making it hard for the ants to stay. But that's for
Okay.
a small, manageable garden. That doesn't really work with a large garden.
Regarding wee ants, we use citrus power as taught by Rudy at BBG. He said use 1 ounce to 1 gallon of water, but you've got to dig out and find the queen and then pour the mixture down there and re-examine in 5 days. Well, we found you need to probably treble the concentration and probably examine the next day and keep examining, because we've had tons of wee ants recently in our orchard.
So the wee ants, it's interesting because we have a lot of them here. We're basically in the jungle. And, but I found that the trees that get, I mean, overnight they can take down a whole tree, the leaves, but they come back. And even the neem trees, they'll get a hold of.
Yeah.
So
Do you lime the bottoms of your trees? Because I notice a big difference in my coconuts when I painted white lime on the bottom of my trees.
yeah, that helps.
Yeah, help me.
That helps a lot. But it's I mean, it's amazing the trails that they make. They just come up and overnight they can take down a whole tree.
Yeah.
But in a way, it's like I've noticed they come back more robust. Maybe it's a natural way for a plant that just needs a new beginning.
Yeah, we've lost a few trees that way though, so I'm not quite sure whether they always come back.
Oh yeah, it depends on the tree, I guess.
Yeah, if it's a fairly freshly planted tree, you've got problems.
Oh yeah, a newbie. But most of my neem trees are huge, and they come back. I don't know about the younger ones, but. So does anybody here use neem as an insecticide?
Yeah, we have. Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
Works good.
Yeah, it does work very well.
You can use it. Is it UBT? What's the one? Neem? Oh, I think there's an EM neem, isn't there? EM5, is that neem?
I know he has. Are you talking about William Escher's products?
Yeah.
I know he has neem in his insecticide.
Yeah, that's right.
I've discussed it with him.
From our neem trees, we've taken the leaves and I've dehydrated them and then put them in the coffee grinder and made a powder.
Right. Yeah,
to add to a spray.
Add that to baking soda and you can make a wonderful toothpaste.
Ah, right. Okay.
Neem is an amazing tooth thing. Oh, look at, she has beautiful teeth. She must use neem. I use only neem toothpaste also. Neem toothpaste is great. But it's also got other medicinal properties. I make a tincture out of it as well.
Okay, excellent.
And it's antiviral, antibacterial, anti-chagas, anti-malarial. So, and it's interesting, a lot of people, they'll try it and they'll say, oh, it doesn't work because it doesn't kill the bugs right away. They just sort of stop eating the plants and they don't reproduce and eventually they die, but it doesn't hurt the other good bugs.
Yeah.
Oh, giving neem gargle to my neighbors with COVID. That's very good. My sister had COVID. I sent her neem and she was like almost overnight, felt better.
Neem. Wow.
Yeah. Yucatan in the north.
Not sure. Getting. in here, babe.
What's this one?
Mm,
Northern Yucatan is really the same climate.
Mhm.
Great, that's a good one for,
I'm not sure how you get in. I wanted to comment, but sure how you do it. Technology is not with me.
Hey,
Hello.
does anyone have any other questions that they would like for us to pass along to Mitty? And as soon as we get the answers, which she's usually very quick about responding, we'll post them on the website, and the video will also be posted on our website under speakers.
Ginny, did you see that question from
Christopher.
someone in Mexico? From someone in Mexico?
Yes, yes.
You got that
northern
one, huh?
Mexico, right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's kind of a different climate.
Is it?
Yeah, I was in northern Mexico when it snowed.
Mm, This person's going to be in the North Yucatan.
That's Yucatan Peninsula.
Oh, okay, the
isn't it? That might
Yucatan.
be similar to us.
Yeah, that probably is more similar.
That's high though, isn't it?
It's what?
No,
Is it high altitude? No?
flat. All of the Yucatan is flat.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Mhm.
There's one
My
little
geography
bit-
is not very strong, you can see.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
one hilly area, but that's it. Way to prompt bolting from plants. Yeah, good question.
Bolting from pots like collards. Is there any way to prompt bolting from pots like collards? I'm not sure what that means.
From plants,
Okay.
plants like collard greens.
Oh, they bolt from pots.
No. Is there
Then-
any way to keep them from bolting, meaning going to seed quickly?
Oh, okay.
Yep.
I know it's a good question for Mitty.
Excuse me. So, my collard plant won't bolt. I would like it to bolt because
Ah.
it's such a reliable green. It just produces unendingly, and it's delicious, but
Yeah.
it won't bolt. It won't bolt, so I can't get any seed. So
Oh,
I would share it if I could get some seed out of it. If I could get it to bloom.
there was a group of people who were selling collard greens at the Blue Moon on Fridays, but I haven't seen them in a while. It was a couple who were, and their greens were delicious. They really were wonderful. They were collard greens. So next time I see them, I'll ask. I think some of those crops do not thrive in the tropics. You need a little bit of cooler weather.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, I heard you were talking about the wee.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, we used to buy some type of pellets they have at the agrovet place. They look just similar like the feed that you give the rabbit, just that it's like a pink color. Don't know what it's the name, but you can ask at the agrovet, and
Okay.
you find where the wee are coming from, where the big molds are, and you would just open the bag and you put it right there on the little road, and they would pick that up and take it down to where the queens are, and that would eliminate all of them.
That sounds like that.
It's quite easy, but you would need to
Smart.
follow them because they come from far away, right?
Yeah, yeah.
The best time is for you to find them like at night, where exactly they're coming from. Yeah, and then you would place that bag there, and you would get rid of those wee in quick time.
Right. Right. So is that like Myrex pesticide?
I'm not sure what's
Insecticide?
in it. Yeah, they look like some little pellets, you know.
Pellets?
Yeah. But you
Okay.
can ask at the agrovet place. It's something for the wee. I'm not sure if they still are importing them or where they get them from.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, but those are very good and so easy to take care of them. I think they might probably cost like $10 for a bag of a pound or so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you could try that for the wee way, you know. All
Okay,
right.
as long as it's not agrochemical, then that's what we're trying to avoid, obviously.
Because I know they would just take it down to the ground where that only their mound is, but not sure what they would do, you know. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Somebody wants to.
Another solution for the wee ants is the leaves from jack beans.
Oh.
Andre Lloyd told us about those. So I grew jack beans and I took the leaves and I put them on top of the mound of where the leafcutter ants are. They take them down into their queen, and that also kills them. Very effective, and it's very cheap.
Oh,
Jack
not heard that
Okay.
one.
Right.
Jack
They don't
beans.
actually.
Like that solution.
Fertilize your soil.
They don't actually eat the leaves, though. They make a kind of a yeast out of it, or fungus,
Right.
and they eat the
right.
fungus.
Right. That's correct.
So maybe it's a bad fungus that they make. So Mary, didn't you grow to Suriname cherry? Somebody asked about Suriname cherry. Is Mary still here? Mary. Anybody else had experience with Suriname cherry? They're delicious.
We love them.
We've got a few bushes, but I haven't grown any from. Well, we've got a few seedlings, but they're still in the nursery, so I haven't got any experience of growing them very big.
Okay. I don't know if Mary's muted.
I've grown Suriname cherries. This is Beth. They grow on heavily lime soil, and they do better if you fertilize them a little bit. Put a lot of what was a type, I don't know if it was pure biochar or not, that Mike Nettie used to sell. He had fertilizer, it was seaweed and biochar, and when I really put that on heavy, oh man, I had lots, and they'll get, my trees are about 15 years old and they are about 15 feet high, and I really should probably trim them because it's hard to harvest them.
Yeah, we have the same sort of size, a couple of them like that. And they produce good crops every couple of years or so, we get a pretty heavy crop.
Yeah, I noticed
and then a few in between.
Yeah, the time of year they used to be, for many years, they were late February and March, like every year. That was the main crop. But now I get them like this year, it was like May or something. Just they're not on the same schedule. And I also noticed that the birds, in the first decade I had them, the birds didn't bother them. And I don't know if the birds are hungrier or they've been deprived of other foods, but now the birds go for them a lot more than they used to.
We're losing some to birds as well. And we've got a few at the moment, right now. Not many, but a few.
Yeah, they.
Oh, someone's got a car in the background.
Sounds like somebody's honking a horn. We've had an interesting experience this year. We had a beautiful lime tree filled with limes and a beautiful mango tree filled with mangoes, but the mangoes were only on one side and the limes were only on one side. I'm not sure why that happened. If anybody has a similar experience.
Gosh, that's weird. Maybe the blossom got blown off on one side.
I don't know. It's
The
kinda
winds
strange,
blew
though.
off the blossom on one side and it
Yeah,
remained on the other.
and on both of the trees, it's on the same side that they had, you know, a whole lot of fruit.
Oh, okay. So it could be the winds.
Could be
or
the
blossom.
wind, could be, yeah, it's crazy. Okay.
Does anyone know if Central Farm advises about beekeeping?
They did. I went to a beekeeping session there. There's like a cooperative of beekeepers, and they come together and they put their honey together. This was a couple of years ago, but it was all in Spanish, and I'm so stupid I don't speak Spanish. So, but there are I think some educational programs for beekeeping.
Okay.
Rene keeps bees. He would help anyone, I'm sure.
Yeah. True.
Yeah, he does keep geese. That's probably why his crops are so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
He has nice honey. Yeah.
Yes, I just got some of his honey. All of his veggies and wonderful. Yeah.
They want plenty, right? But after that, nothing happens. So
That's a good question for our speaker.
I bought cucumbers when fruiting, and I told Lauren, you got Lauren, David.
David and Laura.
So with my committees, so like put in the bananas.
Okay, anything is worth a try.
Yep. So I just want to add here that if anybody's interested who's in the audience today in receiving a harvest list every week to purchase pesticide-free produce, just send your email to the Pro Organic Belize email address with your name and where you would be picking it up. And also on the website, there's an ordering page, which gives you all the details about how to order, where to pick it up.
Yeah.
And just for everyone to know, our next general meeting is October the 16th at 3 o'clock via Zoom. So everyone's welcome to attend those. And then you can join Pro Organic. You can send an email to proorganicbelize@gmail.com. And ask a question or find out information on our website. Also, as Karen was saying, the pesticide-free produce, send an email and someone will get back with you with the produce list. You can look at our Facebook page and Facebook group to join. Our website is pro-organicbelize.org. And then our next speakers meeting will be on November the 6th at 3 p.m. via Zoom. And the speaker will be Julio Saki, if I'm saying that correctly, Mary. And his topic will be chocolate, how to plant, cultivate, and enjoy. So that should be interesting. I assume he lives in the Toledo district. So everyone can join us for that. We'll send out emails.
But what?
Was going to be Julio Saki, and the topic is all about
Oh, chocolate cacao.